French. Hey guys.
Aren't you French?
No. Despite my French name, I am not French.
Sacre bleu.
I know. I can't even do a French accent without sounding terrible.
Many apologies to anybody who's French who is watching this anywhere.
Yeah, I've dressed offensively French today. Yeah, but hey guys, how you doing? Happy Thursday. We will be doing our day 3 of 4 of our cat movies. No, Luke, I am not French. It's a lie. It's a lie. I have a French name. My grandpa on my father's side was adopted, and that was his adopted last name. And then my parents thought they'd give me the French spelling of Amy to go with my fake ass French name. I could be French on my dad's side of the family. He hasn't done his DNA test, but on my mom's side of the family, we're like 80% Scottish and Irish. So
we all descended from the same folks that did some unfortunate things, I'm sure, in the American South when they came over.
Yeah.
I haven't looked into it, but I'm almost 100% positive that any Scottish-Irish ancestry I may have from settlers from that time. If Outlander taught me anything, no.
Yeah, I have some questionable relatives from the South in my ancestry.
Well, it's true. You have family that's from Arkansas. My mom's side has family from Oklahoma. But the Oklahoma people that are like, they were like part Cherokee and then part German.
Yeah. Anyway, but I'm not French. But today's movie we'll be talking about is Gay Purr-ee. So we thought we'd do a French ensemble, if you will. And yeah, that will not be the last time I attempt to speak in a French accent today. But before we go into all things cats, let's talk about yesterday's film. Yesterday, we talked about the fabulous Regina King, who I saw in a Cadillac commercial earlier today.
Yes.
And, yeah, just because then they had her like showing up on set, and she's the director, and I was like, awesome. Yeah, but we watched If Beale Street Could Talk, which is the film that she won Best Supporting Actress for. My biggest complaint about this movie is that she should be in it more.
Yes, definitely that, because I thought I love her. I've actually both loved the actors who played their parents. I really thought the best scene in the whole movie was the scene where they try to tell his family that she's pregnant, and it's like the most dramatically involving moment of the entire film, except for the speech by his friend when he's talking about the 2 years he spent in prison. But it's like these moments, these like great moments with these incredible characters that you see for like a blip in the whole film. I'm like, I wanted more of this energy in the movie.
Yeah,
because
the actress who played the main guy's mother, she was great. Like you hated her in this. It was like, ugh. Like, why are you being so mean?
That was the one moment I think of the film that really challenges its viewer the way I think James Baldwin would have wanted an audience challenged. Like, he doesn't want it to be easy. He doesn't want anything to be easy. So you get through that scene and you're like, God, I just want to smack this person. And then her husband like very violently and very severely hits her in front of everybody. And
then we're like, well,
you instantly question
literally
like that feeling that had like, oh God, just, like you instantly are like, oh my God, what's wrong with me? Because it's like when you actually, it's like, hey, be careful what you wish for in a movie, because if you may not feel so good when you get what you think you want in those kinds of scenes. I thought it was really interesting because that character, I think, was there to really antagonize us. Like, we all felt so bad for Tish and her family, who up to what we've seen are just like a really nice, normal family, like hardworking, made good for themselves. And it's like, that they just don't deserve to be treated this way by anybody. And then, but it's like, so there's like this fascinating dynamic in that moment, but then the rest of the movie is a little too like pretty and
It's beautifully
is,
shot. The cinematography in this is just gorgeous. But I am really curious to read this novel because I know. So, Samir, had you actually read this, or were you just aware of some of the discrepancies between this and the book?
No, I had read this back, I think, when I was 19, which
Okay.
is years ago. Um, many years ago. When I first got like obsessed with James Baldwin and I bought his books. I used to work at the bookstore
Right.
at the time. So I was actually, that would make me more 21 then. When I started, because
And that
I got
was
discounts
only
on
2
books.
years ago.
Shut up. but I hadn't read it since then. But I was looking up some reviews because there's a lot of positive reviews of this movie, but I feel like a lot of people had not really engaged with this book in the way I think they should have. But like, here's a line from the book, because there's some moments that in the movie where they copy the dialogue verbatim from the book, and it's just like really forceful and like really bracing and sobering. You know, like the part where his friend is saying, you know, when you're in there, they can do with you whatever they want, and then he like repeats each word of that line to really drive it home. That's lifted straight from the book that way, you know, and it works so well on screen. I'm like, oh, they really should have kept this kind of energy because that's what's in the book. But here's a line from the book that I think signifies the energy. New York must be the ugliest and the dirtiest city in the world. If any place is worse, it's got to be so close to hell that you can smell the people frying. That energy is nowhere in this movie.
Nope. I mean, there were so many times, and I mean, even look at this poster. It's like they're just strolling right down the middle of the road, like it's no problem in New York. Like,
yeah, it's a little bit
little villages. It was like, I want to move in there. This looks great.
There was some element of the prettification in some ways that for me made sense when I saw the whole film. Where like, okay, a lot of these scenes are memories. So this is how like these lovely like this all he has to live on is memories, you know, once he's unfairly incarcerated. And you know, like when that's all you have to live on, your memory does things to those images in your mind. So it makes them more idyllic and even more beautiful in your memory than they are in real life. So there was some element where I'm like, okay, that I understand that makes sense to me. But there's so many other moments where it's a very spruced up and scrubbed up world. Like everybody's clothes look like they just came from the dry cleaners. You know, like every single scene, like there's no sense of wear and tear on anything. And I'm like, okay, you have these like weathered looking props, but no one or anything looks weathered in this story. And except for Regina King, like you could tell the moment she walks on screen, she's carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders in a way, but carrying it with pride and dignity and strength. But you could tell she's been around for a while and she knows the score. And it's heartbreaking to see how far she pushes herself to save this person. And what she's up against is another victim. You know, really, like, how do you argue with someone who's dealt with something so traumatic and who herself is probably, you know, we don't know what the circumstances of that part of the story is. I can't remember if they go into that in more detail in the book. But like, imagine being a Puerto Rican person in New York City that a white policeman is telling you, you better say this. Yeah. Like, you have no idea how terrifying that can be for that person. And on top of that, they have that on top of the trauma of having been raped. So it's like, you can't bully that person into doing the right thing because that person is like, you could tell from the little bit we see of her, you could tell her world is destroyed. Yeah. She's a broken person. Like, how can you get through to a broken person who can't even get through to themselves? So it's like, you have this mother who there's nowhere for her to go. And she's left in that alley there by herself. And like, oh, it's so devastating. Yeah. And so does it because she doesn't do histrionic anything. She's so in the moment, and like you just believe that like you're sitting there with that person in that moment. Like, I'm just glad that she got her Oscar for this movie. That's the best thing about this movie I can really say, is because I thought she was so good. But yeah, there was a lot. The musical score was just unbearable for me. It was so constant and over the top, syrupy. Like,
Well,
oh my, it was just
it
way
was
too much.
nominated for best score, but it did not win.
Ugh, I do not think it should have won that Oscar at all. I
Well,
thought
it
it was
didn't.
not a good score, and it was way overused. But there was so some of the critiques I had read about. I do feel can be justified in some sense, but I do feel like the movie stylistically is kind of lost. There's a lot of like you could tell he's kind of drunk on his hype a little bit and is kind of just going for pretty a lot of the time, but there doesn't seem like things
And it was
visually gel together. There's
yeah.
just so many things that it feels like I'm watching different movies sometimes. Like sometimes the observations are really poignant and, you know, beautiful, like that moment where Tish and her dad, pregnant Tish is like in, pain at the table. She's like, severe, very pregnant at this time, and her dad just holds her. And there's almost no dialogue in the scene, and just the observations in that room and the actors, like that moment felt so organic and unique. And I'm like, this is where the style that he's going for is working really well. And then other times it just feels like he's kind of meandering, trying to figure out what it is, but he thinks he can get away with it because everybody's already bought Moonlight. So I get a lot of that in this movie.
Yeah.
So that was my main issue with it. But the performers were all like just uniformly amazing
I think
in this movie.
Certainly the standout thing in this film was the acting on a whole. And yeah.
But how did you feel at the end of the movie? Like, did you feel like you got a really big emotional punch from the movie? It felt kind of muted.
That final scene, especially, they get the cutest little boy to be in this. You're like,
he is adorable, but like the overall impression of the movie, like were you like, I felt like I'd seen other movies that approach these topics with a little bit more focus and passion.
I mean, we had to compare recent, like, wrongly imprisoned films. The most recent one of that would have been The Hurricane that we watched. And I think there were moments in that really, and maybe that was just all in Denzel Washington. There were some moments in that were just like, oh, God. But I know this movie, so I watched this with my parents last night. My mom thought it was very slow moving throughout the whole thing. Like, at one point, she was like, "How much longer is this movie?" Mom. Yeah, I do agree with a lot of what you're saying. I am very curious to read the novel to really get a grasp on, and then possibly watch this movie again, just to really understand the differences between the two. But yeah, it is a very pretty film, but maybe it wasn't supposed to be pretty. But the acting certainly was amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I do apologize. I do have something I have to do right now, so I do have to go. If I'm able to join you again.
Okay.
I will, but I gotta check out for a bit and I'll be back, okay?
Okay. Okay. I'm gonna
All right. Sorry.
Okay. Well, yeah, so Samir just left. Left me alone. Yeah, let's talk about cats. Let's talk about Gay Purr-ee. So this is a film that I haven't seen for quite some time. This is one that I remember watching. Yeah, remember Samir technically is like still on call for work when he does this with us. So sometimes he has to move on to things that he actually gets paid for. He's had some work things before. I don't know if he's had to leave right in the middle of the show, but it's bound to happen at some point. Work emergency. But Gay Purr-ee. Let's talk about Gay Purr-ee. As I said, this is a movie that I haven't seen for a long time. Watched this a lot when I was little. We had this on VHS, and then I'm not sure what even happened to her VHS copy. I recently bought this on DVD, so hopefully I still really like this. But this movie came out in 1962. A farm cat moves to Paris in search of the high life while her wannabe lover from back home tries to reunite. Amazing voice cast of Judy Garland as Musette, Robert Goulet, I believe this was his first film, as Jean Tom, Red Buttons as Robespierre, Paul Frees as Meowreese, and we also have Hermione Gingold as Madame Rubinschat, and Mel Blanc, who does a lot of other voices. Mel Blanc is someone who, if anyone is a fan of some of the old Warner Brothers Looney Tunes, you definitely would recognize his voice a lot. Who was the Russian cat and the Aristocats? Yeah, it's interesting. So this came out in the early 60s, and it's interesting that this was, if you watched our show a couple weeks ago, we talked about the Aristocats, which came out in the late 60s, or possibly even 1970. I forget the exact year, but it had been the early stages of development for that. It wasn't supposed to be a film. It was supposed to be something else for TV. Was in the early 60s, and I wonder if this is one of those cases where there were competing studios that were like, okay, we both need to have, like, okay, Disney's doing a French cat movie, and now we need to do a French cat movie, or vice versa. But I feel like there are a lot of studios now that still kind of do that, where it's like, okay, like there's an Ants movie, and then there's, well, what do you know, there's a Bug's Life. That's another animated ant movie. So I wonder if that happened in this, but I think this movie, from what I remember, the visuals are just really, really cool as far as having this kind of fun early 60s style to it. And the songs in it are amazing. The songs, Judy Garland recommended some of the songwriters from The Wizard of Oz to come onto this, and from what I remember, the songs in this are really, really amazing. And I know that Elvis was almost supposed to do the voice of, I believe, Jean Tom, and he turned it down because he preferred to be actually on film and not just use his voice. And I don't know if I could picture, I mean, unless he could pull off a French accent that we're not aware of. I mean, I don't think everyone in this has a French accent. Yeah, but you know, could have been. This was written by Dorothy Jones and Chuck Jones. Chuck Jones being another animation great. And he actually, I think he got fired for being a part of this. I don't know if he got fired by Warner Brothers, but he had an exclusive contract. So basically, him working on this film violated his contract. So that was the end of that. But this was produced by UPA, which this was only one of 2 films that they did. Like, that's it, we're done. This was 2 of 2. Yeah, apparently Elvis was supposed to be in a lot of things. Yeah, Chuck Jones, big animation, great for us cartoon geeks. But this movie has always been received pretty well critically. There were some people when this came out that thought that it was a little too highbrow for an animated film that was supposed to be targeted towards kids, but I enjoyed it as a kid. But this movie pretty much bombed at the box office. Did not do well at all, which is a damn shame. Oh yeah, so this is about Chuck Jones. So Chuck Jones had been under an exclusive contract with Warner Brothers, and he worked on this film, was in violation of his contract. And then Warner Brothers ended up picking up this film for distribution, but once they figured out that he worked on it, they fired him. He was like, cool, I'm going to MGM. I don't need you people. But yeah, this movie just absolutely tanked. I'm really looking forward to watching this. Anytime Judy Garland does anything is just heartbreaking. And this being in the early 60s, I don't think that was necessarily like the greatest time in her life. If you watched our show on Judy Garland a while back, she had a lot of ups and downs, mostly downs in her personal life. But her beautiful voice always came through to entertain us, and I like to think that she enjoyed being a part of this. I mean, she certainly helped a lot as far as getting this made. Excellent question, Luke. Where can I find this film? Unfortunately, this film is only available to rent. It is available to rent on Amazon. It might be on Vudu. Yeah, so we had a good streak of not having to rent some things this week, but you've got to rent this one. I'm sorry. But it really is just delightful. If you are a fan of the Aristocats, this is just like a slightly more sophisticated version of it. And some of the cats in here are just absolutely adorable, and I love them. I can't express how much I'm looking forward to watching this. I know one song that has stood out to me a lot is there's a song where they drink champagne, and the song's called Bubbles. It's like, bubbles, bubbles, millions and billions of bubbles. And I remember that song all my life. That's the one that has stood out. But yeah, you are going to have to rent this one. But all cat lovers, all animation lovers, any musical lovers, if you like all three of them, then you're really going to love this film. It's great. Just so great. And we will talk about it tomorrow. What else are we doing tomorrow? Tomorrow is our Cult Classic Friday pick, and tomorrow we are doing The Philadelphia Story, which is a classic kind of screwball comedy from 1940 with Cary Grant, Katharine Hepburn, James Stewart. And I'm doing, this is one, depending on how long people have been watching me do this show, I have that Turner Classic Movies Dinner and a Movie, or I forget if it's called Dinner and a Movie or Movie Night. Anyway, Turner Classic Movies has a really awesome cookbook where they pair some of the films that they feature with these meals. And this is one of them, and I've been looking forward to doing this. The main thing on the menu is a upscale Philly cheesesteak with truffle brie. So, getting real fancy with an upscale Philly cheesesteak. But that is tomorrow. So please watch Gay Purr-ee tonight. Sorry, this show's a little bit shorter than usual today. There wasn't really a whole lot to say about Gay Purr-ee, except that it's good. I looked up info on it. Not a lot there. Yeah, but please watch it. Join us tomorrow as we discuss it. And then moving on to The Philadelphia Story. Again, Gay Purr-ee is available to rent. Tonight, if you watch some of the other shows I do, we are doing the Bumble Bums Behind the Bums this evening. We will have a special guest with us, Mr. Bo Doran, who was featured in the episode we will be talking about. So you don't want to miss that. Thank you guys again for watching. Someone here loves Purr-ee. We all love Purr-ee. Purr-ee. Yeah, we're just all about French cats all the time. But thank you guys for watching. If you're interested in contributing to our Patreon, I'm going to put the link over here in the comments. I'm going to stop speaking like I am French. This brings back memories. I did this show for a few months before Samir joined me, and I was basically talking to myself. I was like, I have some people watching now, but I'd have no people watching me because no one knew who I was. Okay. Definitely get Duolingo. I do have Duolingo. I have learned some French on it. I did take one semester of French in college, but I've been mostly relearning German with Duolingo, or not even relearning. I never knew any German before trying Duolingo. So I'm a little bit better at German than French, but still not good, and I haven't done that for a few weeks. I'm really bad at not doing it. Anywho, thank you guys for watching today. Thank you guys for sticking with me when Samir had to abandon ship. But we'll be back tomorrow. Hope you really enjoy Gay Purr-ee.